This is Support is Sexy, episode 292, with LOreal Thompson Payton, creator of the blog LTInthecity.com. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elaine Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And if you're ready to finally create a sexy business and life that you love, go to createsomething.sexy.com right now to apply for my high-level mastermind, which is for women entrepreneurs who are serious about taking their business and their lives to the next level with support, accountability, and action. That's createsomething.sexy.com. Open enrollment ends Friday, September 1st at midnight. Now, I'm so excited for this episode of the Support is Sexy podcast. We have Miss LOreal Thompson Payton. And you know, one of the things that I love about the podcast, there are many things, thank goodness, that I love about it, but getting the chance to meet women entrepreneurs and creatives all around the world, literally all around the world, have been featured on this podcast. But what's really fun is talking to someone who is a regular listener, who has supported from the beginning on social media, emails, who I was introduced to when she interviewed me for her agenda. And now it's such a pleasure to interview her and tell her story. And that is who LOreal is. Now, LOreal is the creator of the blog LTInthecity.com. You must check it out. And what you'll learn from LOreal on this episode is how to create your own personal blog, but also her journey of finding her voice, using a platform, pivoting her dream, so many things that she's so honest about in this episode. Now, some of the other things that you'll hear from LOreal is knowing when it's time to pivot and dare to change your dream, the value of the side hustle while you're still building, how to use your side hustle as an outlet for your other passions, smart tips, as we said, on launching that personal blog that you've been sitting on for a while. You've had a lot of excuses. She also gives links that you'll see on her show notes page to a blog entry on her site of how to start your blog, how to get over impostor syndrome, which is very real for all of us, and why you must toot your own horn. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode with LOreal. I certainly did. It was such a pleasure to be able to hear her story and now to share her story. So without further ado, LOreal Thompson Payton. So LOreal, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to talk to you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
It's so funny because I still don't think of myself as an entrepreneur. It's kind of that imposter syndrome creeping in. You're like, I'm not really doing this, but as a freelance writer, I have to think of myself as a content creator. And I think just within the last few years, maybe the last year, honestly, is when I had to make that mind shift from like, oh, I'm just a writer to no, this is a business, and start really thinking of myself and my blog as a business and a brand. And so it's taken a little bit of time, and I don't know if honestly I'm in the love stage of it yet, but I'm in deep like, if that were
going
like,
steady.
Right. Exactly.
Now, how did thinking about yourself as a writer and blogger differently, or thinking about it as a business, as you said, change the way you sort of handle business? Were there any things that really stand out that you changed after you decided to make that sort of mindset shift?
Yeah, being firm about pricing and actually charging people for services instead of like, oh, I'll just do this, or oh, that's fine, or oh, and you're just kind of giving away everything for free. And so I had to, which goes against like the good girl in me, that inherent good girl to please everyone. I'm a people pleaser by nature, and kind of standing firm. And that means saying no to some projects if things aren't a good fit, and just being really confident about who I am and what it is I'm doing, and knowing that, I can't be all things to everybody, nor should I be. And that's okay. So I think it went from saying yes to everything to being very selective and strategic in my approach and the type of projects that I take on.
It sort of pushes you to, it's not even as much, well, I won't say it's not as much. Do you think it pushes you to also put more value on what you're doing as much as it does to value in yourself? Because I know I'm a people pleaser too, and you want to help everyone. That's what what a lot of us are all about. But at a point, you have to figure out how to put value on some of the things that you're offering.
Exactly. You can't save the world if you don't save yourself first. And the older I get, I just realize how much a premium time really is. And I know the cliche is time is money, money is time, but it really truly is for me to take the time away from my family, my friends, or, whatever it is I'm doing. It's got to be worth it. And so I read something, or maybe actually you mentioned it in one of the previous episodes, that if it's not a heck yeah, then it's a no. And so that's something I have to do the gut check, essentially. Like, is this something I'm really, truly excited about and want to get behind or be involved in? If the answer is yes immediately, then let's do it. But if there's hesitation, or I'm trying to talk myself into it or convince myself, or something just doesn't feel right, then it's a no. And it really can honestly be as simple as that.
What you mentioned about time is so important too, because I remember doing an interview with Catherine Finney. This was maybe 2012, 2011. And she spoke, Catherine Finney, for everyone listening, is the head of, the founder of Digital Undivided, great organization. And Catherine talked about this idea of pricing and knowing your value and that kind of thing. And she talked about, as you said, with time, she thinks about what would it cost for me to spend time away from my family to do this thing? It is that number, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting way to think about it. Time away, whether it's family or whatever it is that you're doing. If this isn't something you love, what will it cost? Is this enough to pull me away from the things I love in order to do it? So that's another way to look at it.
Absolutely.
Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in a very small town outside of Baltimore, Maryland, called Belcamp, which not many people know where it is, but small town, conservative county, and it's just very interesting how I've ended up in Chicago the last 4 years, actually this month. Very small town roots, but always had those big city dreams, and the goal was all along to become an editor-in-chief of a teen magazine in New York. And I thought Chicago would kind of help me get there. And that was supposed to be a temporary I was just passing through, but as I said, 4 years later, I'm still here and no longer in journalism. So it's just funny how life kind of happens.
What was a young LOreal like growing up in, where did you say it was? Belmar?
Belcamp.
Belcamp.
A nerd, and to be perfectly honest, I'm still a nerd.
We love nerds.
Yeah, but it was nerdy before being nerdy was
cool,
though.
Right.
Exactly. Very bookish. I skipped 4th grade, and so that kind of sets the stage. I'm valedictorian of my 8th grade class, and I'm just very smart. I always had my head in a book. I'm obsessed with Beauty and the Beast. It's my favorite movie of all time, and I think I just fell in love with Belle. Like, oh, she likes reading, and I like reading, and identify with that. And even my parents would make fun of me that I would just walk and read and not pay attention. Where am I going? And I've always had a pen in hand. There's a picture of me and my sister. I must have been 4 because we're 3.5 years apart, and she's about 6 months old, and we're sitting on the sofa. She's like propped up in the corner, and I'm next to her with a notebook and a pen. And what was I writing? I have no idea.
You were interviewing her.
Probably, yeah. Like, it's always been in me. I actually got in trouble at my grandparents' house for using the designated homework paper, like paper I would use for my homework after
the good
school.
Paper.
Right, for writing stories. So I wrote stories. The first one I remember was about dinosaurs in outer space. Very vividly, I drew a picture of a spaceship that had a dinosaur on it. And yeah, I've just always been writing, always been reading. I'm obsessed with words.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. A lot of your story reminded me of myself when I was younger. I just loved writing, the actual action of writing before I could even write. I just loved having a pen. Yeah, I didn't know, like you said, what was I doing? I don't know, but I just knew that I liked doing it. Same with me with the typewriter. My mom still has all of these scraps of paper with random stories on it. So it's just in you.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, I don't know a world where I've never been writing or reading. It's just ingrained. Like, I can't turn that off.
So who were some of your greatest influences growing up?
Oh gosh, definitely my parents. And it's so funny. I was thinking about this the other day. My mom had, by the time it was my mom's age, so I turned 30 in October, and she had already had me and my sister. I'm like, I can't even keep a succulent alive. So how did you do it? It's just so this idea of adulting and being responsible, and to be a working mom, a working Black mom, and just make it all look so effortless. It's just really impressive beyond any kind of scope of understanding. And my dad, who's a retired firefighter, I just remember my sister and I watching him go off to work, and it's something that he just truly loved. And I think that's where we first had the notion that you can have a career and love it. And it's not necessarily about the six-figure salary, although don't get me wrong, that would be nice. Mm-hmm. But it's more important to help other people, to really give back to your community, and at the end of the day, to truly love what it is you do, which I feel like has really influenced me throughout my career. And on the pop culture side, growing up, being obsessed with teen magazines that at the time were not as diverse as they are now. I mean, the Teen Vogue of today was not the one that I grew up with, and the YM and the 17 and Cosmo Girl. So that really was the catalyst for my career and dedication to journalism and wanting to help young women of color, because I didn't see myself represented in those pages, and really set about this mission to do something about it so that other little girls never feel the way that I felt, where I was literally praying to God to make me white, because I thought that there was this shame and stigma in being Black. So when Beyonce, grew up with Destiny's Child, and really, I think it was when Bootylicious came out, that it was like, okay, like it's okay to have curves, mm-hmm. and have some thicker thighs and the full and everything. So that really helped me on a physical kind of side. That influence of like, it's okay to be Black, like it's not a bad thing, and helped me embrace those curves and all of the awesomeness that comes along with being a Black woman, because I didn't grow up with a Black first lady like so many of today's girls, with Michelle Obama, the forever first lady, in my opinion. Right. So, and my gosh, wow, she's just a really truly great influence. This notion of having it all and being it all, but she's so strong and smart, but transparent about the struggle that comes along with that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, I have a lot of influences. I guess a lot of strong Black women in my life, or that I know. Well, I don't know Beyonce and Michelle, obviously.
Not yet.
But exactly, not yet. And then Kyra Kyles, who was my boss when I was at Jet Magazine, and who's now like my big sister, friend, and mentor, and I love so much, has just helped me so much personally and professionally, that I owe a lot of my success to her.
Nice. Now, you mentioned that growing up, there was a period where you felt like you prayed to God to make you white. What were you going through at that time? Was your neighborhood predominantly white, or? Oh,
yes. Everything was white. Neighborhood was white. My school. I went to an all-girl Catholic high school. I was one of two Black girls in my graduating class, and it's so funny because my middle school, elementary school were predominantly Black, but I got made fun of there for being smart, for skipping a grade, for speaking proper English. Exactly. They actually called me an LOreal. Like it was just really, middle school is just rough, in general. And then I get to high school, and obviously I'm not white, so I don't really fit in with them, but I like NSYNC and Britney Spears. And so there was this whole identity crisis and a lot of self-hate, honestly, that was going on there. And it wasn't really until college, I would say, that I really started to become comfortable in my skin and really owning and being proud of being a Black woman.
So interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that part of your story, for sure. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to it. I actually personally can relate, because I went through that when I was same thing in school. I grew up, though, in a Black neighborhood, which I love, my neighborhood where I grew up, music outside, barbecues, very much the Black young experience. But then I went to school in a predominantly white school. So it was like balancing, as you said, those two words. I mean, now we have language for it. People call it code switching and that kind of thing. But going between the two worlds, and at at that time, even music was very separate. It was Madonna and Sting and all these things over here. And then it was, you might not even know these groups like Karis One and, Slick Rick and all these people over here. It was very separate. But now it's interesting the way things have changed. But in any case, I experienced similar to what you did of just trying to navigate both worlds, trying to fit in both worlds and be who you were. I felt like I was both. Now I know that I was both, as far as things that I was into. Yeah. But you sort of, I don't know if you felt this, but there was a period for me where it's almost like, well, I'm ashamed of liking, Madonna was kind of crossover, but I'm ashamed of liking Cyndi Lauper, and I'm ashamed of, having this part of the Black experience, and I don't know where to fit in. So it was a bit of a struggle.
Absolutely, for sure. Like, it's just growing up, and as complicated as is, and then when you're in these two different worlds. And that's why recently I just finished Angie Thomas's The Hate U Give, and such a phenomenal book, and I related so much to the main character for that very reason. She's in a Black neighborhood, which I wasn't, but just that navigating both worlds, and you're not Black enough for the Black kids, and you're not white enough for the white, and it's, like, where do I fit in?
I wonder if kids still go through that as much now, just because of, as you mentioned, there's been, not that we definitely don't live in a post-racial America, but I mean, but still just the idea of, they have seen the first Black president, so it's not a thing for them that would be impossible and that kind of thing. I have to ask some young people I know. In any case, how did you sort of navigate that time and get through that? What was your escape, or what was your sort of healing through that time?
Reading and writing. As much as I, kind of was upset and frustrated with these magazines because I didn't see myself reflected in them, I still had those subscriptions. All the books, I mean, you put me in a library and a bookstore and I'm good, like I'm set for life. But writing was really critical at that time, is when I started journaling. I kept a journal, and it was just the best way that I knew how to express myself. And then as I got to high school and I was on the school newspaper and editor-in-chief and had these columns, is when I recognized that I can use writing as a platform to not only express my thoughts and opinions, but it can be used as a way to help other people and empower them as well. And that's when I just fell in love with the idea of journalism and really set about that quest to become editor-in-chief of a teen magazine. And it hasn't happened yet. Again, yet being the operative word here. But that mission, that passion, that drive has always been within me about using words to help other people, and especially women of color, and just so passionate about paying it forward and helping those girls who look like me.
So what school did you go to?
I went to Mount DeSales in Catonsville, Maryland.
Okay.
For high school, and in college, Loyola, well, now it's Loyola University, Maryland. Now, back then it was Loyola College.
Okay. And you said you sort of feel like you found yourself in college, or became more comfortable, I should say, with yourself in college.
Yeah, my dad forced me to go to a pre-orientation program for all the students of color, and I was like, I don't really want to cut my summer short. Like, I've already kind of been there, done that. Why are you making me do this? And fought it the whole way. But of course, I had no say. So here I am.
It's like you're going.
Exactly. College a week before classes started, and through the Black Student Association, actually ours is called Alana, and I forget exactly what all the letters stand for, but it was African American, Latino, pretty much every student of color. And we met and we went on field trips, we had parties, we just really bonded and got to know each other. And that's where I met for the first time other Black girls who had the same experience I did. And it was like, oh, I'm not alone. Like, I'm not the only Black girl nerd. And that's when it became like, all right, there's more people like me, and we can all hang out and have fun together.
What did you study when you were at college? Did you study journalism?
Interestingly enough, I did not. I majored in communications and specialized in journalism and minored in Spanish. So my idea even back then was, okay, journalism's kind of shaky. And so if I graduate, which I did during the recession in 2008, this whole journalism part doesn't work out. I want to have a more well-rounded communications background. So I took some PR classes and took some more marketing classes to just get that kind of well-rounded communications background so that I would be more marketable in that way.
So what was the first job then out of college? Because that was a tough time it was a tough time for everyone, but especially for people who were getting out of college.
Well, it's funny. See, what happened was at the time I was interning for a teen magazine called Girls Life, which was a national magazine but based in Baltimore, interestingly enough, and had been interning there the whole senior year. Was offered a position in January, and I'm like, this is great. That's awesome. I don't have to look for a job. I'm set. And then sure enough, as my luck would have it, 4 weeks before graduation, they had to rescind the offer because the economy. And I was like, oh crap, what do I do now? Because I wasn't looking for a job all this time. And I, as any, millennial, self-respecting millennial would do, I went to Europe for a month. I studied abroad during the school or my junior year in Spain for my minor. But then after graduation, went to a very small town in Italy and did kind of a crash course in communications and web design, photography, so forth and so on for about a month. And
now, how did you, sorry to interrupt, how did you do that? Was it a program that you did, or were you?
It was through my school and a collection of other universities like Marquette, and there are a couple of other ones. And I was just like, this sounds like fun, and I don't have a job, so why not go to Italy for a month? And basically kind of a glorified internship, if you will. At the same time, I was still working my summer job at the local science center in the kids' room, but all of the applying and everything paid off. I still remember actually sending in my cover letter, writing samples and resume on paper, like in a manila envelope to the hometown paper. Got a call from the editor, like, hey, come on in for an interview. And on my way home from the interview, they offered me the job. So I got lucky. Honestly, I mean, it took a few months. This was October 2008, but my first real job was a general assignment reporter for the local paper. And again, this is a very conservative county, and this was around the time when Obama was running for office. And sure enough, I got some actual physical hate mail. Like, people hated it so much. I got handwritten letters from people after I wrote a column about Obama's inauguration and what it meant to me. I got hate mail after I wrote about, I think there was like a kid that wanted to take her girlfriend to prom, and I was like, why not? And got hate mail because of that. Actually, I had my editor pull me aside and apologize to me as an older white male, and was like, I should have warned you and prepared you that, there's some racists still in this county. And but I looked at it as just like, I wouldn't have done anything differently, though. Like, I recognize that this is a platform that I have. I have a responsibility as a reporter, as a writer, as a storyteller to share that story, to speak my truth, and to, just give a voice to people who may not be able to speak for themselves. So I'm just going to keep doing me, and ruffled a few feathers in the process, but I don't regret a single thing.
That's excellent. And then how did you then go from there, if not from that job, but from Baltimore at that time to Chicago?
Sure. So I moved up within the publishing company. It was a part of the Baltimore Sun Media Group. And then after I left the newspaper, I spent some time in their magazine division as an assistant editor for their Home and Garden magazine. And this is before I discovered my love for HGTV. So I was not as exactly that passionate about it. And that's around the time I started blogging and freelance writing on the side to talk about the topics that were important to me and that I cared about, and just kept moving up through the newspaper and the magazine, and eventually landed at the Baltimore Sun. But at the time I was dating this boy. I feel like there's always a boy.
It's always about a boy.
Exactly, who was in Ohio, and we were talking and friends, and he moved to Chicago shortly after we started dating, long distance, and I was like, okay, a couple of years into this, like, my goal is to be in New York. I'm going to have a easier, maybe faster way of getting there if I move to Chicago. It's a bigger market than Baltimore, but we were not engaged at the time, and so I was like, hey, if this doesn't work out, I need to make sure that I'm still setting myself up for success in my career. And so networking on social media, was following Kyra Kyles, who I think at the time had just left Red Eye and started working for Jet, and I was freelancing for them at the same time I was at the Baltimore Sun. And so when an opportunity became available to join her on the digital side, of the magazine, I immediately leapt at the opportunity and moved here 4 years ago. And I can't say I haven't looked back, because the first couple of months were a little rough, just being away from my friends and family, but I eventually found my groove, and that's how I ended up in Chicago as the digital content editor for Jet Magazine.
Did your friends and family, especially your family, I would think, did they support you making that move at that time? Especially, even though I know you were doing it for a career, but as you said, it was about a boy, at least in the beginning. Did they support your move?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, my mom was after I graduated, I moved back home, as millennials are wont to do. So I think at that time, she was kind of ready to get me out the house.
She's like, just go.
Right. I mean, I wasn't ready. I think I was the one who was very hesitant, and it all happened so fast. Like, I remember getting a call from Mitzi, who was editor-in-chief of Jet at the time, and it's like, hey, we need you. I know, right? Love her. Can you start in 2 weeks? And I'm like, and my mom said that's probably the best thing that could have ever happened, because I didn't have the time to think about it and talk myself out of it. Exactly.
So what was it like then? You said the first couple of months you were looking back. How did you make it through those first couple of months? Did you stay focused on what your goal was, or what was it for you that kept you there, other than the guy?
Of course, friends, making friends. And it's so fun, as your podcast says, support is sexy, and leaning on those different support systems. I was lucky that I had a friend I met in college who lived out here, and her best friend was looking for a roommate, and I needed a roommate. So we lived together. I joined a local gym that's for women only, and made some workout sisters there who are awesome and loving. I love Flirty Girl Fitness. It's a sisterhood. It's not a gym. It's really a community. And another networking group called She Says, which is a group of creative women in Chicago. And we have different events throughout the city, and meeting really incredible women through those events. So we're just kind of branching out of my comfort zone. Like, I am a little... like, I don't know if I'm putting myself out there, and I'm new, and just what do I do? And really being in a new city and trying to find my way and make my mark, it forced me to get out of my comfort zone and lean into these support systems, and just grow and thrive in those spaces.
What was the name of the gym that you mentioned, that you said is not a gym?
Yeah, Flirty Girl Fitness.
Oh, Flirty Girl Fitness. Is that a chain? I never heard of that. Is that a Chicago thing?
I think they might have started in Canada, actually, with a couple of sisters, and then expanded to Chicago. And it's great. It's lovely. I mean, it's one of the luxury kind of gym, but it has a ton of classes, a spa, a bar, and it's my me time. Like, that's kind of my therapy and my getaway. Like, yeah, it's my happy place.
I love it. For everyone listening, of course, I'll have links to everything, but I'm like, what is that? That sounds interesting. I have to see if that's here in Atlanta. Very interesting. So now, when you started working at Jet, was it the dream job, and was the dream everything you thought it would be?
I think it started off as the dream job. I'm like, I'm in the magazine, and I'm doing like everything my 16-year-old self ever wanted to do. But I burnt out quickly. So about a year into it or so, I remember vividly, and I feel like I've told people who know me, I've heard this story a million times, but it was the day of the Michael Brown shooting in Ferguson, and I was all dressed up and dolled up to go on a double date. Then I don't even think we were engaged. I don't know. We might have been engaged. And his best friend and girlfriend, and the news broke, and I'm like, oh shoot, it's just the two of us, Kyra and I, on the website. So I grabbed my laptop, immediately got to work, and then it just kept happening, with all of the police shootings and the hashtags. And I was working so quickly to get the news up, to make sure that we were one of the first to report, or to make sure that everything was on social media. And I became desensitized, because we were working so fast to get the story up. It's just, everything kind of becomes a blur. And so essentially you're changing the name and the city, but the story, unfortunately, is the same. And I was not prioritizing self-care in the way that I do now, putting everything into what I was doing, and it just became too much. And I had to take a step back, and I thought, you know what? I got into journalism because I wanted to help young girls. And the skills that I have are writing and editing. I'm a storyteller, content creator. That's what I do. How can I merge the two in a way that is meaningful and also, like not where I'm not burnt out. And so I started thinking about, okay, maybe nonprofits and nonprofits for girls, and made a short list of companies I would love to work for. And at the top of the list was Girl Scouts. I mean, it's the largest girl-led organization in the world. And as I want to do, I'm very social media savvy and can finagle my way, found their marketing person online and met her for coffee and just kept in touch. And so when an opportunity became available is when I jumped at that one and was like, yes, I would love to become your media relations manager, which is weird still kind of being on the flip side of, pitching journals. Like, I'm so used to being the one being pitched, but in a way that makes me really great at my job because I've been there, done that. I know what the journalists are looking for. So it makes me a stronger publicist in the fact that it's like, hey, I know what you're going through, so here's everything you need for this story. And it's been a really awesome ride.
Wow, so much in that story. I think one of the things I wanted to mention, though, for anyone listening who works in an industry, I know I was at consulting with Huffington Post during the time that Alton Sterling was killed. And then I think it was the next day, Philando Castile. It was right after each other. We were all kind of, and among other verticals, working with the team at Black Voices. And I remember during that time how, as you mentioned, how overwhelming it was. It's almost like you don't have time to process. And next thing you know, you realize you're sitting there crying on your laptop. It was just and I'm sure for a lot of people it still is, because as you said, it continues to happen. But anyone who's reporting on news like that or that kind of thing, I always tell I couldn't continue to do that day to day as part of my life or part of my work. And I just honor people who do report on those kinds of stories, anything like that, war zones, which it sort of is, war zones and everything. But in any case, just the idea for you, I'm glad that you decided that you figured out a way, how can I take care of myself and still do the thing I love? And for the people who are doing those kinds of jobs, I always say, make sure you take care of yourself, because we do, you think at least for me, it's like, in a way you feel like it's desensitized, but it's not really. You're feeling it, but you're not allowing yourself to respond to it, which is probably worse, right?
Yeah, you feel numb, and it's you gotta
numb.
Put your oxygen mask on first. You can't help anyone else unless you help yourself. And now, self-care is everywhere, and everyone is really prioritizing that work-life balance, or at least balance in general. But it took me a while to figure that out and to really make it a priority, where if I had done things differently back then maybe, who knows, I could perhaps still be in full-time journalism. But I think I've found the happy place where the day job is girl empowerment and all that good stuff, and I get to then, in my freelance writing and my blogging, choose my story. I can write about what I love, and it's kind of having my cake and eating it too.
Now, how did you, speaking of that, how did you gather the courage to have your cake and eat it too? Because a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but some of us, if we had been dreaming about something forever and then we got to the point where we sort of landed that dream job, we may have just stayed there a lot longer and not made the change. Even though I feel like you women, millennials, you know what you want, you go after it. But for anyone else, what would you say gave you the courage to make that change, or even to decide you were going to do it and then seek out someone who could help you do that, as you did with the person at Girl Scouts?
Yeah, I'm very persistent, very determined. You tell me no, one door closes, I'm the one who's going to find a window to climb into. I don't, no is not a final answer in this realm. And it's just, at the end of the day, I want to write. I want to write, and I want to empower women and girls, and women especially, to pursue their personal and professional goals. So how can I achieve that? And it's just, my husband makes fun of me all the time. He's like, even if I had probably the 6-figure dream job or whatever that looks like, I probably still would have a little hustle in me with I just want to write this. I want it. And I don't know if that's the millennial in me, that we all have these side hustles, because I'm learning that you can't rely or expect just one thing, one job to give you everything, to be your end all and be all. And that's the same with relationships, honestly. I know people like, my husband's my best friend and I love him dearly. But my sister's my best friend. My best friend from college is my best friend. I can't rely on just one person thing. Exactly, to fulfill all those needs. And so I think that's where, it's like the girl part and my day job, and then still in this, it's all when my brand, the L'Oreal brand, me as a person, is all women and girls empowerment. Like I eat, sleep, and breathe. It's in literally everything that I do, and I don't know how to turn that off. So I think it's part of me just wanting to do so much and help in any way that I can. That I end up taking on probably, honestly, a lot of times a bit more than I probably should. But I joke almost every night, that I just want to change the world. And so whatever way I can do that, I'm just really eager to leave my mark on the world, whatever little bit it may be, in whatever way, shape, or form that takes place.
Well, bravo to you for having the courage to live that out loud, as they say. This is what you want to do. As you said, it's who you are, your personal brand, or who you are as a person, and you're figuring out a way to do it each day. And I think that's a point for people to think about, even if let me project this on you, but even if you were in the full-time journalism position doing something else, I feel like you would still find a way to empower women and girls through your work or writing or storytelling or something like that.
Amen.
Okay. So what would you say then? I know you mentioned about the side hustle you probably would have either way. Is that something that a side hustle, do you think, is something that people can look to as their outlet for their dream if it's not something they find in their 9 to 5?
Absolutely, yes. And that's how I was just reflecting the other day when I started my blog in November 2010. I was writing about expensive lampshades and paint swatches, and I just wasn't feeling it. So I started blogging as a way to write about the stories that I cared about, that I wanted to see, that were important to me personally. I started freelance writing to amplify that voice and to, in my selfish way, get more magazine experience and stories that I did want to write about, to finagle my way into Jet, which worked and ended up in a full-time position. But I remember Sharia Jackson, actually, with Essence, she was with Heart and Soul at the time, and that was my first freelance story. A friend from college knew her through NABJ, National Association of Black Journalists, for all the listeners who may not be familiar. And I emailed her. I was like, hey, this is kind of what I want to do and what I'm thinking about. Because again, with women, and especially with Heart and Soul, the wellness aspect to it being very important to me as well. And she took a chance on an unknown girl. And I've been freelancing ever since. And so that's because right now, and that's also a way, I think, to explore those other topics, and it's a creative outlet essentially for me, and things that I may be a little bit limited in what I can say and do in my day job. It gives me the opportunity to explore that on the side, to be a bit more vocal on issues that are important to me, such as Black Lives Matter and women's rights, reproductive rights, on the election, and all that good stuff. So it's I am one of those people, it's a side hustle, but I'm quite content with the hustle it remaining on the side. I'm not, at least right now, trying to make it full time, because I think for me right now it's still fun, in all honesty. And I want it to remain fun, and it's a paid hobby essentially, with what I write for Hello Giggles and Ceci, which is a teen magazine for Black girls, essentially the magazine I wish existed when I was younger. And I've been writing for them for, forever now. It seems like 6 years, maybe 5.
What's that one called?
Ceci, SESI.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a quarterly print publication. I'm the advice columnist. I used to write the horoscopes, and I just believe in its mission so much that no matter what I end up doing, I will probably always be involved in some way, because again, with the paying it forward and giving it back, and wanting young Black girls to have what I didn't have growing up, and that being a safe space for them in the form of a magazine.
Now tell us about your blog, ltinthecity.com. I'll have a link again for everyone listening, but tell us about it. What would you say is the intention of the blog? And then for those listening who are thinking about starting their own blog, what would you say were, your first 3 steps to getting it off the ground?
Definitely. So the blog, and I really need to work on having a better answer, because it's a lifestyle blog. It's really just a personal blog. It's lessons that I've learned, or in most cases and still learning. And the hope and goal behind that is that by sharing my experiences, by being transparent in my journey, that it can help someone else. I'm a big believer in honesty and authenticity and transparency, and the goal behind my blog is to help other young women pursue their personal and professional goals, and honestly live their best lives. You know, we're all in this together, as you know very well. Support is sexy. So how can we be sisters to to each other and help each other out? I believe in community over competition every day, all day. And so that's essentially at its core is just about how can we help each other and kind of, especially with social media, I feel like everyone's looking at each other's. I think Sharia actually said this, maybe in this podcast, honestly. That,
I love Sharia.
Love her so much. Not to compare your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. So part of my goal and mission in my writing is to always keep it real, in all honesty, because everyone looks at each other like, oh, she has it all together. And I don't. I really do not. And my husband can attest to that. So it's like by sharing that story, kind of breaking that barrier, we can all help each other. And for people, and it's so funny because I was just talking to a coworker who is interested in starting a blog and actually have a post on my blog about how to start a blog. It's one of the most popular
we have to link
questions
to that.
that I get. Yeah. The first piece of advice is just to do it. And I know I was actually in Galvanize, Chicago this past weekend, the summit hosted by United States of Women, and a college student had asked me as well. And I think, you know, and I know for a fact that I'm a perfectionist, and that kind of perfection paralysis can prevent you from even taking the first step. So
I was going to say that people get stalled at the idea stage. That's why I really wanted to hear from you. How did you, especially I think too, when you have something else going on, whether it's your full-time job or whatever the reason that you can come up with, the blog just remains an idea.
And honestly, the advice I gave to the college student was be afraid and do it anyway. And you just have to go for it, because someone somewhere needs to hear your story. And all the time, even with all the followers that I have and all the writing that I've done, sometimes that imposter syndrome creeps in and I'm like, who cares about what I have to say? But then, you know, I'll send out a newsletter or write this story, and inevitably someone's like, thank you so much for sharing that. That's exactly what I needed to hear, or I'm going through the same thing. But if we don't talk about it, no one ever knows. So someone somewhere needs to hear your story, and it's your responsibility to share it and to be consistent, set realistic expectations. You know, there's some people, I'm going to start a blog and I'm going to blog every day. And I don't know who has that kind of time, but all the power to them. So start small. You know, you can always build, but the key is to be consistent, lay that foundation. And then the part that admittedly I need to work on is self-promoting the heck out of it. Because it gets so, especially with focusing on my day job, obviously during the day, I don't really have the time to be on Twitter all day working on, you know, promoting. And so scheduling it in advance, Hootsuite is my best friend when I use it. Like I said, I need to get better about doing that, because closed mouths don't get fed. So if you're not promoting your work, then it's like, if you don't care, why should I care? And that's very important, especially in this day and age of social media. Content is queen, I say. Forget kings, it's queen. And you need to, because what's the point in spending all that time writing it if you only publish it once or post it once and promote it once? You need to be consistent and be regular about shouting from the rooftops and mixing in some other things with that. Then some people take that and go in the complete opposite direction, and everything is self-promotion, and that's also a turn-off. You know, you want to hear from other people's blogs. The thing is, be a resource. I want to be a resource for other young professional women like me who are just trying to figure it out. You know, like we're just trying to figure this whole thing out called adulting and survive at the end of the day, and not just survive, but thrive. And I want my blog, my social media accounts to be a resource for them to do that.
Do you use Meet Edgar? Have you heard of Meet Edgar?
I've heard of it, but I haven't looked into it yet.
LOreal. You got to.
Okay.
It's worth the
I'm gonna make a
investment.
note right now.
I use Hootsuite as well because they, well, not to get too technical, what they allow you to do that Meet Edgar doesn't. But both, for everyone listening, if you don't know about them, I'll have links, of course. But they're both social media management tools. But Meet Edgar, I think I'm having the founder on soon. I'm excited. We'll see.
Oh, awesome.
But in any case, it's a woman. But Meet Edgar, though, is it's amazing because for me, in my experience, as you mentioned, some days you may not get to schedule the things that you want to, to go up the next day or whenever in Hootsuite, but Meet Edgar recycles your content for you, and you can decide when when you want it to go up. So in the morning, if you want a tip to go up, you can do that. In the afternoon, if you want, another kind of post in the evening, or you can have it be random. For me, it's great, and I think for a lot of solopreneurs, because at least that your quality content is going out regularly. And they, and I used to think at first, oh, but do people want to see the same old stuff over and over again? Well, you're seeing it over and over again. They're not. Like, you might post something that I really want to see, but if I'm not on Twitter or Facebook or whatever at that time, I might miss it. But when you're posting it again and again, they say that there's been studies that we need to see things 7 times or hear it 7 times, right?
Yes.
Before we even take action. So there's that too. In any case, not a paid endorsement, everyone, but I absolutely love my experience with Meet Edgar. So I'm going to send you a link, LOreal.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out. Thank you.
We have to check it out. I think I still have a link to maybe a training or something that she did talking about it. And that's a great segue into if you want to try the product.
Awesome.
All right, that's my good deed for the day.
Thank you.
No, it's a good one, though. No, that's great. And I think what you mentioned, too, about your blog, or just the idea you said about the importance of getting out your story. Everyone has a story, right? And it's deciding how we want to express that.
Definitely.
How do you handle, you mentioned also impostor syndrome.
Oh.
I know. And listen, I get it. I go through it.
Yeah, it's problematic, and I don't practice what I preach. So I've written blog posts on imposter syndrome, the panels on it, telling people, like not that it doesn't exist, like owning, I think recognizing it is the first step. But I fall victim to it as well. I mean, even before this call, I'm just kind of backing out, even though I emailed you about it. I was like, oh, I'm not really qualified for this. Who's going to care what I have to say? Why does this matter? And, and it's just, and you allow those thoughts to, permeate or like really fester, it can be really detrimental. And probably the best pep talk I got was from my husband and Melissa Kimball, founder of Black Creatives. And I think before an Ebony Twitter chat that I did, honestly, both of them sent me messages, and my husband Jeff was like, hey, if you weren't qualified, they wouldn't have asked you in the first place. And I was like, true that.
Nice husband Jeff.
Exactly. And Melissa, who was running the social media for Ebony at the time, had invited me to the Twitter chat. Was like, you deserve to be here just as much as anyone else. And it's kind of having that validation from your friend, like your trusted circle, to give you the pep talk that, I'm so good at giving to other people, but I also need to hear at times. And I actually took a screenshot of the text that she sent me right before the Twitter chat of letting me know, like, hey, you really, you do deserve to be here. I went to recently a lecture reading Roxane Gay promoting her new memoir, Hunger, where she says, I work too hard, and I forget exactly the quote, but essentially, like, I kicked ass and I deserve to be here in this room. And so it's owning that, like, just, and sometimes maybe even pretending to be, Beyonce has saucer fears, so if you need to call on that alter ego, pretend you're someone else, or pretend you're someone else talking about you when you need to promote yourself, whatever it takes. But just believing in your heart at the end of the day that I got this, I deserve this, and I'm going to own it.
Excellent. I love that. Absolutely. And I think, too, a friend of mine, Marlon Peterson, has said in the past, when people talk about, oh, well, I'm not an expert in this, or I have to do it this amount of time to be an expert, et cetera. He says, you're an expert of your own experiences.
Yes.
Yes, right?
I'm writing that down.
Oh, my gosh. You can give him credit like once and then it's fine.
Yeah.
No. But when he said that, I remember being like, oh, my, it was so freeing. Like, yes, you're an expert of your own experiences, as long as you're not, pretending to know things that you don't know or talk as an expert. Well, as you said, it's a little bit of fake it till you make it. I always say work it till it's true.
Yes.
As opposed to fake it till you work it till it's true. You're going to keep doing it and moving toward it and learning as you go and sharing those experiences along the way. Excellent.
Absolutely. Especially in today's day and age, there's so many so-called experts out there, or people like how to make six-figure income with your blog. And it's such a turn off to me, because I'm like, okay, if your blog is just about blogging and making money, then it's kind of like, what's the point? And I mean, it's not to throw shade at anyone, but there's also value in being a novice. You don't have to know everything. And I think we've lost sight of that in this quest to become social media influencers and this, that, and the other. And that's what can be overwhelming to people who are just like, well, where do I start? Because everyone's an expert, but I like that. You're an expert of your own experience, and you don't have to be a Jane of all trades. You can just do one thing and do that well, and that's okay.
Right. And I think to what you just mentioned, your point of people talking about how to make six figures, how to do this, but then for people listening, it's sort of, you have to be careful of that too. Not to say those people don't know that, but sometimes those people don't know that. And you're taking these lessons, like I would never do a blog about cooking because I'm not a great cook. I can cook, but I'm not a great cook. Or I would never do actually a blog about finance. I shouldn't say never, but probably not likely a blog about financing or finances, because it's not my area of expertise. But I can talk about other things based on my experiences. And again, if you're an adult, even if you're a teenager, you have experiences that you can share. So when you're looking at people to read and invest in, it's great to look at, well, what are their experiences, not even just what they say is their experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. What would you say, LOreal, entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
I'm a lot stronger and a lot smarter than I give myself credit for. So tying into the whole imposter syndrome thing, again, it's like when I actually take a step back and look at what I've done and been able to accomplish, it's like, I don't give myself enough credit. And I think that sometimes as women, especially, we don't take credit for work, or we're shy to really toot our own horn. And I'm just going to go toot it all over the place now, because if I don't, who will? And so it's taught me to be more firm and just owning my experiences and not being afraid to say no, that there is power. I think it's Shonda Rhimes in her book that said no is a complete sentence. It's like, it is that easy? Okay. And then you try it, but like courage is a muscle, saying no is a muscle. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And just, I am a boss lady. I'm still figuring it out for sure. I don't have all the answers. I feel like anyone who says she does is a liar. But that, I can do this.
You can do this. Absolutely. I believe in you. You got it.
Thank you.
So in closing, LOreal, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
I knew you were going to say that because I listened to the blog, and I was honestly thinking about this on my way home last night. How do I boil it down to one person when there are so many? I mean, I didn't get here on my own. I stand on the shoulders of the women who came before me. So I have to give a nod to them. But I think to combine both the personal and professional, I would have to say my dad. And so it goes back to that story, one of the homework paper about the dinosaurs in outer space, and whatever grade I was in, maybe 7 when I wrote that. And he came to pick me up from my grandparents' house after we got off of work. And I told him about this story that I was like, Daddy, look, there's this story I wrote. And at the time, because again, #nerd, I was in the, our libraries have the summer reading program, and you have to write down all the books you read over the summer. And he encouraged me. He's like, well, why don't you write your own book? Like, you wrote it, so you read it, add it to the list of books you wrote. And I was like, or the books that you read. And at that time, I was like, wait a minute, I can write this? And he gave me permission, essentially, to be a writer and supported me from day one. My dad has always been my biggest fan. I mean, this man, I know it probably annoyed my mom that he saved every single story that I wrote in the newspaper when I was there at the time. And that was about 2 years. So that was a lot of stories that came out Wednesday and Friday. And so there's this big collection. He has like this brag book of my report cards. And he's just always been so proud of me and supported my dreams, even when they were crazy and seemed unachievable, and just has always believed in me, reads everything that I write, and is my biggest cheerleader, my biggest fan. And I wouldn't be here without him. I just love him so much.
Oh, gosh, that was so sweet. That was getting me misty, honestly.
I know, they're like, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
I'm not going to cry. Right. I usually have to say that to myself when people share their stories. That's powerful. I'm sure he'll appreciate that.
Yeah.
Excellent. So now tell us how we can support you. Your website, again, tell everyone, and where they can find you on social media and anything else you want us to know about.
Yes, so my website is ltandthecity.com. Go there and sign up for my newsletter.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, sorry.
LOreal's newsletter is so good. Every Wednesday, right? Isn't it every Wednesday?
Yes.
Don't I usually email you or I was like, let me try to share this on social media and tell people. I don't know if you just want subscribers to see it. I'm like, I'm going to share it.
No, share far and wide.
Yeah, it's excellent. So definitely people sign up for that. Okay. Carry on.
Well, thank you. I mean, and from a woman as respected and a media vet that you are, like that really meant a lot to me, that you read it and enjoy it. And so, yes, LT in the City Weekly, a midweek dose of motivation, inspiration, and more. I always have job listings and just kind of these morning musings, like whatever I'm going through at the time. And again, like the perfectionist in me, I'm going to write this ahead of time and it's going to be perfect. And it's not, I'll like, oh, scrap that and let me change it and speak from the heart. And those are the best ones because I can have like, oh, this will be perfect and everyone will think I'm so awesome. And then it's like, y'all, I'm tired. Right. I'm exhausted and I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, sign up for the newsletter. Follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at LT in the City. A lot of cupcakes and selfies and that kind of fun stuff. So yeah, just hang out. Let's be friends.
So fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. I'm glad to get a chance to talk to you again.
Thank
LOreal
you.
and I spoke before was it for her agenda?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's when we first chatted. So I'm glad to have you on the other side this time.
Yeah, it's been a treat. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for creating this podcast. Like I listen to it all the time, obviously. And I was telling a friend about it. And as much as I enjoyed the interviews, it's honestly your episodes where you're just dropping all the gems of wisdom that I love the most. Like you're my mentor in my head. So thank you for doing what you do.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, honestly. And as you know, I'm sure as you experience with writing, even beyond imposter syndrome, sometimes you think, is anyone really listening? Or is anyone really reading? Right. Even if you see the numbers and those kinds of things. So I appreciate every single person like you who says that.
Yeah. So, we're all in this together.
Exactly. Support is sexy.
Exactly.
So before you go, LOreal, tell us a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything.
Ooh, I know it's so cliche, but it's true, to be yourself. I mean, especially nowadays, I think actually it's Lauren Ash of Black Girl in Ulm, in her last blog post, who posed the question, do you want to be a social media influencer or do you want to be influential? And that really, I mean, nowadays where that speaks numbers, I mean, the more followers you have, the more you can charge and this, that, and the other. And it really was more important, to me at least, to be more influential. If it's just one person who is touched and inspired and empowered by me sharing my story or whatever I write, then that's good for me. Like, that's good enough for me. That's all the validation that I need, is to pay it forward and help someone else. And you can only do that by being true to yourself and who you are. I mean, everyone has this niche and you just got to stay in your lane. You know, it's so easy to get distracted. Oh, that's working for that person. Let me try this. Oh, that's working. Let me hop on. No, you're going to have more success. It's going to be more, because people can smell a fake from a mile away. So just keep doing you, be yourself, and it'll all work out.
LOreal, thank you so much. Hold on for just a second.
Yes.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with LOreal. LOreal, thank you so much for being so open and honest with us. For all of you sisters listening, make sure you go to supportissexypodcast.com, search LOreal, L''OREAL, LOREAL, and her show notes page will pop up with tons of resources there. You heard we mentioned quite a few people in pop culture, quite a few authors because she loves books, as well as links to that blog post that L'Oreal did on how to launch your own personal blog. So support is sexy, podcast.com, search for L'Oreal, and her show notes page will pop up. You'll have all the links and the resources there. Also, because it's Wednesday, I'm excited to share our review of the week. This is something that I'm going to start to do every Wednesday when I remember. I wrote it down though, so that I can make it a habit, right? Form good habits. But every Wednesday, Women Crush Wednesday, I'm crushing on all of you and a few men too. But thank you so much for your reviews. And look, your reviews matter more than you know. It's not only helpful for me, but it helps the podcast to rise to the top so more people can see it, which is really what it's all about. I'm passionate about letting women know that having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. So if you haven't left a review yet, please do so. I'd love a 5-star review, but any feedback from you is so appreciated. So this week, the review that we're going to do is from LaJola. And LaJola says, I've just listened to several Support is Sexy podcasts, one featuring Karen Young of We Shave. I love that one. It was brilliant, thought-provoking, informative, heartfelt, and educational. Elaine is a great listener. She lets the guests talk and tell their story. This provides a great opportunity to learn the listener's story and learn about their trials and tribulations. In short, I just loved it and have discovered a bit of inner peace in their sharing. Thank you for your gift, Elaine, and for having such informed and supportive guests. Thank you so much, LaJola. I appreciate your feedback. I love that you love the show. And I agree. I love the guests and the fact that they share their stories so openly. So thank you. Keep the reviews coming. I'm reading all of them and going to read some of them on the show, so I'm excited to hear from you all. All right, thank you as always for listening. I truly appreciate you. I look forward to coming back here to chat with you all tomorrow. And in between episodes, we can chat also on social media. So at Support is Sexy and at Elaine Fluker are the two best ways to reach me. I respond to everyone, so make sure you reach out there and share the show and the episodes that you love. All right, now, until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.